No other outlaws charmed the Old West quite like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Their legendary adventures even made it to the silver screen, most notably with the 1969 film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. These are the mysterious lives of the most famous duo of the West. The true number of Wild Bunch members is unknown. Some of the better-known outlaws from the gang included Cassidy and Sundance, but also Will Carver, Ben the Tall Texan Kilpatrick, Elzie Lay, Bob Lee, Lonnie Logan, Harvey Kid Curry Logan, Flat-Nose Curry, Matt Warner, and many others. Some were married, some were single. Many of them were simply outcasts, forced by one incident or another to step over the lines of the law. Within the confines of their many hideouts, they found acceptance among each other, as well as a forum for their varied talents. With or without the gang, each member of the Wild Bunch had a gentleman's agreement to never betray one another. Under Butch Cassidy's leadership, the gang was rarely violent. The outlaws were instructed to shoot at the horses, not the riders, if the gang was pursued by a posse. Because of his family ties and his reputation as a robber rather than a killer, Butch Cassidy was able to retain relationships with respectable people. According to Cassidy's sister, Lula Bedinson, Cassidy came from a respectable Mormon family and had a number of honorable friends scattered throughout the West. Often, proceeds from the robberies Cassidy took part in went to needy families, earning him the title of the Robin Hood of the West. In return for his generosity and compassion, Cassidy's friends were willing to put him up, feed him on the run, finance his escapes, and lie about his whereabouts. Even law officers liked Cassidy. The outlaw was sentenced to prison for stealing a horse in Wyoming in 1894. When Constable Henry Bodecker was asked why Cassidy wasn't shackled with the other prisoners, he responded that the outlaw was the only one who could be trusted. 18 months into his sentence, he met with Governor W.A. Richards to discuss early parole. Although Cassidy told Richards he was far more interested in robbing banks than stealing horses, the governor released him anyway, upon a promise from Cassidy that he would leave Wyoming banks alone. An excellent marksman, the Sundance Kid sported a more reckless reputation than his easygoing counterpart. In 1882, 15-year-old Harry Longabaugh headed west with his cousin in a covered wagon. The would-be robber was arrested for the first and only time in 1887 for horse stealing and served 2 years for the crime at Sundance, Wyoming. The young outlaw took his new name from the town where he served his time. Upon his release in 1889, the young cowpoke took an honest job breaking horses. In 1892, however, he was named a suspect following a train robbery at Malta, Montana. The Sundance Kid met Harvey Logan in 1897, and the two robbed a bank in Belle Fourche, South Dakota. Both were captured and jailed in Deadwood, but were able to escape. Eventually, Logan introduced Sundance to Butch Cassidy, and he officially joined up with the Wild Bunch. But as much as Sundance sported a reputation as a gunfighter, sources confirmed that as far as anyone knows, he never killed anyone during his time with the Wild Bunch. Rather, Sundance preferred the persona of a dapper Dan who was a favorite of the ladies. It is he who kept company with an equally refined woman, the mysterious Etta Place. As romantic sounding as her name is, Etta Place was not the lady's real name. Pinkerton's earliest documentation about Place identified her first name as Ethel, Etta, Eva, or Rita. There are numerous theories as to her origins. Other historians have said the woman at the hideout was not Place at all. The real Etta Place claimed Cassidy and Sundance met Place at Fanny Porter's brothel in San Antonio, Texas. But Place fails to appear in any documents related to Fanny Porter. All that is known for sure is that the lady fell hard enough for the Sundance Kid to risk fleeing from the law with him. Etta Place's story, or lack thereof, is a fascinating addition to the outlaw's tale. In the movie, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, a rather comical scene depicts Wild Bunch members accidentally blowing up a train car.
Well, that ought to do it.
The scene immortalizes the infamous robbery of a Union Pacific train near Wilcox, Wyoming on June 2, 1899. Among those newspapers to report the incident was the Telluride Daily Journal in Colorado, where a young Cassidy had robbed his first bank back in 1889. Authorities scrambled to find the culprits as Cassidy, Sundance, and their gang scattered in all directions. It was not until October that Cassidy and his buddies were even identified as the robbers. It would be 2 more years before authorities could put their finger on any of the bandits. Pinkertons and other detectives looked everywhere for the elusive robbers. Finally, the men found what they were looking for in the way of Lewis Curry, aka Lonnie Logan, whom they tracked to a small town in Kansas. Logan was killed while trying to escape, but the lawmen also found another important clue. The robber had recently been in Cripple Creek, Colorado, with a man identified as Bob Curry, better known as Robert Lee. The Cripple Creek Morning Times verified that both men had been involved in the Wilcox robbery and likely knew the whereabouts of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Officers notified the Cripple Creek sheriff to find and arrest Bob Lee. When Lee was found, he was dealing a game of stud poker at the Antler Saloon. Under Sheriff Harrington approached the man. Lee claimed he wasn't armed, but when they searched him, sure enough, Lee was carrying a huge pearl-handled 6-shooter. Lee was extradited to Wyoming, where his trial was set for May. Although noted Cripple Creek attorney J. Morris Finn defended him, the 1900 census verifies Lee as a prisoner at the Wyoming State Penitentiary in Laramie, where he was serving 10 years for his participation in the Wilcox robbery. 2 years after he was released, Lee's death certificate verifies he passed away from Bright's disease at just 45. Lee never implicated Cassidy and Sundance in the robbery. The Pinkertons agency, angered over the Wilcox robbery and tired of the Wild Bunch's antics, set out for Cassidy and Sundance with a vengeance. As Bob Lee went through the ringer over the Wilcox robbery, others of the Wild Bunch were having a high time. On November 21st, 1900, Sundance, Cassidy, Will Carver, Ben Kilpatrick, and Harvey Logan had their portrait taken at a photography studio in Fort Worth, Texas. A Wells Fargo & Company detective saw the image, recognized Will Carver, and sent a copy to Pinkerton's detective agency. Shortly afterwards, Sundance took Etta Place to New Orleans to celebrate the new year before the couple traveled to Pennsylvania to meet Sundance's family. The two next went to New York, where they saw a doctor for some unknown ailment and joined up with Cassidy. During their time in New York, Cassidy, Sundance, and Place used various aliases as they spent 3 weeks seeing the sights. At Tiffany & Company, Sundance bought a fancy lapel watch for Place, as well as a gold watch for himself. More telling to Pinkertons was the only known photograph of Place with Sundance that was taken at DeYoung Photography Studio. Just a few days later, Sundance and Place were believed to have boarded the SS Herminius for Buenos Aires. Ann Meadows also found that Sundance and Place checked into the Hotel Europa upon their arrival, and that Sundance opened a bank account amounting to about $12,000. Soon after their arrival in Bolivia, Cassidy, Sundance, and Place traveled to Argentina. There, they purchased a 12,000-acre ranch in Cholilla Valley. Cassidy purchased cattle, sheep, and horses, and built a cozy cabin for the three to live in. Cassidy now went by James Ryan, while Sundance and Etta masqueraded as Mr. and Mrs. Harry Place. Their aliases would change over time, especially when the three returned to robbing banks around 1904. Soon, wanted posters were appearing throughout South America looking for the pair. But Place must have sensed some uneasiness about remaining in South America, as she traveled back and forth to the United States at least 4 times. The last time was in 1905. It would be the last time anyone would hear any official news about the mysterious Etta Place. History reports that on November 4th, 1908, Carlos Perro, messenger for a Bolivian mine, was accosted by 2 men wearing bandanas over their faces. The pair relieved Perro of the payroll he carried and disappeared. Authorities were notified and headed to the village of San Vicente, where 2 men had been identified per Perro's description of the robbers. When a soldier approached a house where the bandits were hiding, he was shot dead. After the ensuing gun battle, lawmen entered the house and found the bandits, who appeared to have committed a murder-suicide. The corpses were laid out on the patio and later buried in the cemetery. The trouble was, the men were only assumed to be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Some people believe Lula Bettinson's story that the duo's friend, Percy Siebert, purposely started the story that Cassidy and Sundance had been killed, so that the Outlaws could go straight without further interference from the law. Soon afterwards, stories began circulating that the Outlaws had returned to the United States. For years, numerous people claimed to have seen Cassidy or Sundance, or both after 1908. Wyoming Tales and Trails reports that one of the earliest claims came from Milton David Hinkle, who said he saw Cassidy and Sundance in Argentina in 1909, and again in 1913. Ian Meadows gives citations of additional sightings reported in 1910, 1915, and 1918. The stories went on and on. The most believable tale of those claiming to have seen Cassidy came from members of his own family. Cassidy's nephew, Bill Bedinson, claimed there were roughly 20 well-documented sightings over the years. Bedinson also supported his mother Lula's claim that the outlaw came home in 1925 and spent time with the family. Lula said Cassidy died in 1937, a date which lines up with the death of William T. Phillips, who claimed he actually was Butch Cassidy. The debates about whether Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid really died in 1908 likely would be less famous were it not for the classic film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Most captivating to audiences at the time was a disclaimer in the opening credits of the film reading, "Most of what follows is true." In the years since the movie was released, dozens upon dozens of books and articles have been written about Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, Etta Place, the Hole in the Wall Gang, and the Wild Bunch. Although hundreds of new clues and evidence has surfaced regarding the deaths of Cassidy and Sundance, no solid conclusions have been reached. In life, the Outlaws eluded the law with finesse, and in death, the elusive pair has managed to give history the slip. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.